This smell. It's etched into me forever. Cheap cologne, the sour reek of stale beer, and underneath it all, the faint, inescapable scent of despair. That was childhood. Not idyllic pictures with apple pies, but a tiny trailer box somewhere on the outskirts of a dying town in Pennsylvania. Rain hammered on the tin roof like hail on empty cans. Mom, Loretta, her face in the dim glow of the kitchen bulb looked like cracked porcelain. Once beautiful, now etched with pain at the corners of her mouth. Dad, Frank. Frank was thunder. His footsteps, his voice, his fists. My first love? Fear. Thick, clinging, like molasses in January. I escaped at 17. With Dylan. He had a Harley, even if it was battered, and a leather jacket that smelled like gasoline and freedom. He kissed me under the old railroad bridge, and his hands felt like a promise of protection. How wrong I was. Our freedom turned into a leaky trailer on the outskirts, worse than my parents. Dylan worked as a mechanic, in quotes, because he spent more time stripping other people's cars for parts than fixing them. Money slipped through his fingers like water. On cigarettes, beer, on what he called letting off steam. And letting off steam often meant my bruises. First accidental. Oops, sorry babe, clumsy me. Then, you piss me off with your whining. Then just because. Because he could. I endured. Where could I run? To Loretta, who was barely holding on herself. To a shelter? Shame burned me from the inside. I was Evelyn Carter, but I felt like a kicked stray. And still, I clung to those rare moments when he'd sober up, drag home a half-dead rose from a neighbor's yard, and whisper, "You know I love you, Eva." Love. Poison disguised as nectar. Ribs. He broke 2 of mine that night. Dead drunk. Angry I had no money for his steam. The pain was so intense every breath was a knife in my side. Inside? An icy void. Get out. Had to get out. I ran. At night. With one backpack. Bus to Philadelphia. City of lights? For me, concrete jungle, where I was the smallest prey. I worked. God, how I worked. Dishwasher in a greasy spoon where the air clung to your skin. Janitor in an office skyscraper, where from the 30th floor people looked like ants, as insignificant as me. Salesgirl in a cheap clothing store that always reeked of synthetic fabric and customer despair. Money. Went to a closet-sized room in a neighborhood the cops avoided, to food that barely sustained life, to second-hand jeans and sweaters. Beauty? Withered. Exhaustion carved deep shadows under my eyes. But a stupid, stubborn hope lived. Find him. The real one. Family. Home. A child. And he found me. Max Maximilian Caldwell. Sounded like it came from a novel. Not Dylan in his oil-stained jacket. Slim in a perfectly tailored cashmere coat. Eyes, warm brown, seemed to see right through you, but with kindness. Financial consultant. Took me not to diners, but cozy bistros with soft light and menus in French. Spoke magic words. You deserve peace, Evelyn. I'll build you a fortress. You'll be safe. I drowned. Believed. Gave myself to that illusion completely. He was my salvation. My prince from the skyscraper. Wedding. Modest but elegant. In a small chapel. His parents, Robert and Eleanor Caldwell, looked at me like a strange, slightly dirty insect that had flown into their impeccable world. From such places, echoed in their cold smiles. I didn't care. I had Max. And our small rented apartment in a decent neighborhood. Sunny living room, kitchen with a real refrigerator, bedroom with a big window. Seemed the nightmare was over. I breathed freely. Then it started. First, microscopic jabs. Darling, your sauce, it's a little different from mother's. Hers is unparalleled. That blouse. Are you sure the color suits you? Then invisible walls. Where were you so long at the supermarket? Who called? Show me your phone. I made excuses, tried harder, bent over backwards. Because he loved me. Jealousy meant love. Right? The first slap. Light, almost careless. Sorry, darling. You wound me up with your stubbornness. I froze inside. But I swallowed it. Like I swallowed the next blow, harder, when he came home late smelling of someone else's perfume. I was back in a cage. But gilded now. With a pool in the complex and neighbors who smiled politely past the concealer on my bruise. And with a child growing inside me. When the test showed 2 lines, I cried. From happiness that new life grew within me. From terror that it would enter this house. Maybe the baby will change him, soften him. God, what a fool I was. Max took the news as a personal insult. Not the time. I'm on the verge of partnership. Did you think about my career? He withdrew, became cold as marble, and started disappearing. Working dinners. Business trips. The smell of foreign perfume became constant. Labor. Long agonizing 18 hours of hell. When they placed that tiny wrinkled screaming miracle on my chest, Daniel James Caldwell. The world flipped upside down. Love. All-consuming, unconditional, fierce. I would have torn apart anyone who looked at him wrong. He smelled of milk and tenderness. His tiny fingers gripped mine with unexpected strength. Danny. My light. And Max. Max hit rock bottom. Literally. The partnership fell through. He got fired. He drank. Blackout drinking. Money vanished. Sold my car. Then his expensive watch. Then his grandmother's antique china. I was torn between Danny, who demanded all of me, and night jobs. Cleaning shifts in that same skyscraper where I once dreamed. Unloading boxes at a warehouse until my back burned. All for scraps to buy formula diapers. And home? Home was a drunken, hateful monster who used to be Max. He screamed at Danny. Shut up, you damn brat. Shoved me when I tried to soothe our son. Threatened. Get him quiet or I will. The world shrank to the 4 walls of that one sunny apartment, now reeking of cheap whiskey, fear, and baby cries. That night, Danny cried. Colic. I drained to the core, swayed on my feet, rocking him, whispering disjointed lullabies, praying he'd sleep. Every whimper echoed like a gong in my temples. Max lurched off the couch. Drunk. Eyes glazed, vicious, inhuman. He staggered. Shut that brat the fuck up, he roared, spittle flying. I clutched Danny to my chest, turned towards the wall, trying to be a shield. Max, please, he's tiny, his tummy hurts. He lunged. Wrenched Danny from my arms. I felt the tiny fingers slip from my hand. Time slowed to an icy drip. He lifted my son and threw him, not onto the couch, not onto a chair, onto the kitchen's tile floor, with all the force of his drunken rage. Silence. A sharp, choked cry, like a thread snapping. And then nothing. Just a strange, wet gurgling sound. The world stopped. Froze. Then a sound ripped from my chest. Not a scream. Not a howl. Something primal, inhuman, shredding my throat. I dropped to my knees. Danny lay unnaturally still, his head at a sickening angle. A small, dark pool spreading on the cold tile beneath his little head. His eyes, the same brown as his father's, were wide open, staring at nothing. Empty. Lifeless. What did you do? I breathed out, looking up at Max. Not shouting. My voice was hoarse, alien. He stood, stupidly staring at his hands, then at Danny. His face contorted fear, fury, denial. His fault. Little bastard. You always held him wrong. Your fault. I don't remember what happened next. I remember cold. The cold grip of the heavy cast iron skillet I'd just washed. It stood nearby in the sink. I remember its impossible weight in my hand. I remember the dull, wet, nightmarish sound of the impact. Thud. Against his screaming, twisted mouth. Thud. Against his temple. I remember him collapsing. Like a sack of meat. Awkwardly. Finally. I remember absolute, deafening silence. The hum of the fridge. The drip of the faucet. And Danny's gaze. Empty. Accusing. Forever. Hell.
Pure, un'adulterate del.
Everything ended. Everything. My son. My husband. My life. I sat on the kitchen floor in a puddle of blood, his mine, feeling nothing. No pain in my knees on the tile, no smell of iron and death. Time ceased. Somewhere far away through the fog in my head, a siren wailed. Neighbors. Or death angels. Didn't matter. Next a void. Patches of light. Voices. Mrs. Caldwell? Mrs. Caldwell, can you hear us? Hospital. Bright lamplight. The smell of antiseptic overwhelming the blood. Doctor's hands. Psychiatric evaluation. Acute stress reaction to severe psychological trauma. State of effect. Trial. Eleanor Caldwell, her face twisted with hatred like a fury. Murderer. She killed my son. And her own child. Neighbors. Their testimony. The constant fighting. The history of my life. A long trail of evidence. Victim of chronic domestic violence. Mitigating circumstances. Sentence. Not life. But time. 5 years. Women's prison. Linwood. Prison. A new layer of hell. The humiliation of searches. The filth of communal showers. Constant fear prickling my spine. Women around. Just as broken, feral, or cowed. I became a ghost. Evelyn Carter dissolved. Only number 87342 remained. Mechanically ate tasteless slop. Sewed prison uniforms in a workshop where the air was thick with dust and despair. Slept on a narrow, hard bunk. Inside, a dead, scorched desert. No pain, no sorrow, no anger. Nothing. Absolute zero. Only Danny's eyes haunted me. Every single night. And that sound. Thud. I didn't cry. The well of tears had dried up forever. I served my time. Got out. The gate clanged shut with a metallic clank. Where to? Nowhere. Philadelphia had changed. Grown. Become even more alien, bright, indifferent. No home. No family. No money. No profession. Only a release paper and an invisible brand on my forehead. Murderer. Though technically I didn't kill Danny. But I didn't protect him. I brought the monster into his life. I let it happen. I was too weak, too stupid, too blind. I worked as a cleaner at a 24-hour mini-mart on the corner. Slept in a tiny, mold-smelling storeroom behind the counter. Ate what Sal, the perpetually tipsy owner, took pity on. Expired sandwiches, bruised fruit, lukewarm beer. Life was flat as cardboard. Day after day. Mechanical movements. Mop, rag, vacuum. Sometimes men hassled me. Drunks from the bar across the street. Hoodlums. I looked at them with the same empty stare I'd perfected inside. They backed off. What could you take from a ghost? One late evening, I was mopping floors in the hallway of an old, dilapidated apartment building in a neighborhood even cabbies feared. The air was thick with the smell of old grease, tobacco, and despair. And then a soft crying, like a kitten that's been stepped on. I lowered the mop. On the bottom step of the stairs sat a little girl, maybe 5 or 6, blonde pigtails messy from tears, dress pink with a faded print but clean. She sat knees drawn up crying, quietly, hopelessly, bitterly, like I had under the drumming rain in the trailer. Something shifted inside. Not pity, not pain. Something ancient. Kin. I walked over slowly so as not to scare her. The mop stayed behind. Hey, I rasped. My voice was unfamiliar from disuse. Why the tears? She flinched, lifted a tear-streaked face. Big blue eyes full of fear. Mommy. She hiccuped. Mommy didn't come home from work. Keys with her. I'm scared alone. Scared. I sat down on the step below, not too close. The floor under me was sticky. Nothing scary here. Just me. And spiders, probably. She hiccuped again. I fumbled in the pocket of my old jacket. Found a crumpled green apple Jolly Rancher. Held it out. Here. Suck on it. Helps. She took it timidly, unwrapped it, popped it in her mouth. Sucked, hiccuping. What's your name? Emmy. She whispered around the candy. Pretty.
I'm Evelyn.
We sat in silence. I didn't smoke, no cigarettes. Just sat, feeling the cold of the steps through my thin work pants. Listening to Emmy suck the candy, to the old pipes ticking somewhere in the walls. The smell of mold, candy, kid tears. A sudden strange mix. A door slammed downstairs. Footsteps. Quick, nervous. A woman appeared on the stairs. Young, but exhausted to the bone. Face pale. Panic in her eyes. Grocery bags in her hands. Emmy, she gasped, dropped the bags, pulled the girl close. Then her eyes fell on me. On my worn clothes, my face etched with wrinkles and prison pallor. My hands rough from work. Her gaze flickered with the familiar. Fear, disgust, instant threat assessment. The way Max's parents looked at me. The way the guards at Linwood looked. Thank you, she mumbled, hurriedly picking Emmy up, grabbing the bags. I'm late. Shift. Thank you. She practically shoved Emmy through their open apartment door. The door slammed shut with a dull thud. The lock clicked. I stayed sitting on the cold step. The grocery bags, forgotten by the door, gave off a sweetish smell of overripe bananas. I looked at the green candy wrapper lying nearby, at a dark spot on the floor where a drop from the mop had fallen. I remembered another spot, dark, spreading on white tile. I remembered Danny's empty eyes. I remembered the deadening silence of the prison cell. I remembered Emmy's bitter hiccup. And then something inside snapped. Not a sob. Not a laugh. Something strangled, tearing through years of dead silence. A croak, like a rusty door in the wind. Then another. And suddenly, wetness. Hot, salty, fiercely burning. Tears. They streamed down my cheeks, leaving dirty tracks in the dust and exhaustion. Not weeping. Just quiet, ceaseless tears. For Danny. For his unlived life. For my stolen youth. For who I was. For who I'd become. For Emmy, who was scared of me like you're scared of the dark. I sat on the sticky floor of the stinking hallway, in my work clothes, and cried. Silent, soundless tears shaking my worn-out body. And in this icy fucking hell, in this bottomless pit of grief and guilt, suddenly, like a sprout cracking through asphalt, came a sensation. Not hope. Too late for hope. Not joy. Too absurd. Just a sensation. That I was here. That I was alive. That these tears, this hellish chest-splitting pain, this was life. Cruel, unfair, broken. But life. It was still here. Inside me. Stubborn. Indestructible. Even after everything. Even when it felt like I should have burned out long ago. The tears stopped as suddenly as they started. I took a deep, ragged breath. Smelled mold, rotting bananas, my own unwashed clothes. Reality. Raw, unvarnished. I slowly stood up. Knees creaked. Picked up the mop. The water in the bucket was dirty. I dipped the rag, wrung it out. Dragged the heavy, wet mop over the spot on the floor. Smudged it. Step. Pulled the mop behind me. Another step. Then another. Where? I didn't know. But I walked. Because stopping meant surrendering completely. And I'd stood on the edge too many times already. And as long as that spark, not of light, no, just of stubborn, dumb existence smoldered inside, I would walk. Through the shit. Through the pain. Through the memories sharp as shards of glass. Just walk. Because the only other way out, well, there wasn't one. As long as I had this sensation, I was still alive. And that was mine. The only thing I had left.